31i team is learning more about an analytical tool that led to a man being paroled. That man now stands accused of murdering 3 people, including a small child. Former parole board members gave their opinions on that tool and if it's working on releasing dangerous people onto the streets. The Attorney General's office is even questioning the parole board's use of this analytical tool. They told Way 31 this case also raises concern to the board's risk assessment procedures and whether or not the implementation of this process is failing the public. Way 31's Brecken Terry interviewed a man who served on the parole board for 11 years but left because of the changes at the board, including the use of that tool. Brecken.
Bobby Longshore served on the parole board for 11 years and actually denied Jimmy Spencer parole twice. He told me when the parole board started using an analytical tool to measure an inmate's chances of reoffending scientifically rather than judgment, he says he couldn't continue.
I just did not want an analytical tool trumping my expertise in the system.
Bobby Longshore told me he spent countless hours poring over an inmate's file before reaching a decision to grant parole or not. But Longshore said all of that changed with the Justice Reinvestment Act of 2015. It implemented the Ohio Risk and Needs Assessment System, better known as ORAS, the analytical tool used by the board today.
As I saw that there was a move to place the blame on the parole board for overcrowding and to blame the parole board for failure to fix it. Certain programs were projected and proposed that I could not and did not support.
Basically, the analytical tool takes into account a parole officer's notes on an inmate, among other things, and puts them into categories like you see here: high risk of reoffending or low risk of reoffending.
The analytical tool, which they will tell you right now, is simply a tool to look at, and it's not a guide as to whether someone should be paroled or not. Whether or not that's the way it's being used, I don't know.
The parole board told us it uses the analytical tool 2 ways: to take into account an inmate's chance of reoffending and if an inmate's granted parole, supervision he or she needs.
The board gets the assessment and they base their decision on the probability that the ORAS assessment dictates for that person, probability of reoffending, and then we do an assessment once they're in the field and determine how their risk of reoffending in the community, and we base our supervision on that.
The Attorney General's office told me it's concerned about the parole board's policies and procedures like this analytical tool, but for right now the AG's office does not have a better solution. Live in the Shoals for the Way 31i team, I'm Brecken Terry.